So it looks like we are on air.
We are live.
My name's Luis, and I'll be moderating this debate. And from the right, we have Joden and Joseph, and from the left, we have PJ and Neil. And we're going to be talking about two topics. We'll be talking about, excuse me, my allergies, of course, are kicking in as soon as I start talking. We're going to be talking about the Iran war and taxes. And Joden has graciously volunteered to kick off the Iran war part of the conversation. So Joden, start us out.
Yeah, so I guess when we start talking about Iran, I mean, there's a whole bunch of history that I guess you can go with, but we'll just have the assumption that people kind of know about, Iran, and they've got this want for, the death of Israel, and they have been pursuing nukes for quite a while. And so where America kind of comes in, and where this Iran war, which as it's dubbed as a war, it's an interesting label, because it's not necessarily the kind of, it's not an on the ground, boots on the ground kind of a war. But like, why is it that the United States really got themselves involved in this conflict? So what really happened that kind of sparked everything off was, it was kind of a meeting between, I can't remember their names right now, but it was like two individuals from the Trump administration. They went to have a discussion with, I think that this is after, okay, so Iran was like, we're developing nukes, and we found out that they're developing nukes, and so we did these very targeted strikes, and we blew up what we believed were all of their nuclear development sites. And what ended up happening is they go in there and they're having a meeting to kind of basically negotiate and say, look, you're not going to be allowed to create nukes. It's simply not an option. And what the leaders of Iran did is that they said, ha ha ha, you didn't get them all, and we're weeks away from developing a nuke of which we're going to blow up Israel and anybody who tries to get in our way. And so they took that news back to Trump, and then they went, this is like a day or two later or something like that, and they said, okay, well, you guys are all gathered into this, all of the leadership, the head leadership gathered into this room. And Trump said, well, we're just going to take you guys out because we're not going to be playing these kinds of games. And so, boom, we took them all out. That kind of threw things into chaos. And then they got another set of leadership, and then boom, we took them out too. And then they got another set, and I believe we took them out too. And then I think maybe it was either the third or the fourth set. We blew up and potentially injured, rumor has it, the latest leader. And so that was really kind of the launching point and the start of how and why all of this kind of stuff really took place. And so I guess from there, the negotiations started to be like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to try to negotiate with this new leadership to say, you don't get to do this. And then they started firing off missiles into all these other countries. And then they blocked the Strait of Hormuz. And what Trump did is he said, hey, well, he offered and said, look, this is your guys' region. All you countries over in that region, you guys need to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. And none of them decided to do that. And so Trump blew up their military, blew up their navy, blew up all of their effective combat abilities. And then since nobody took control of the strait, and Iran was saying, hey, we've got mines set all over the place in here. he said, all right, then we're going to do it. So then we go in and we create this massive blockade. Negotiations kind of continue and continue, and everything's kind of more or less just been pushed and pushed and pushed. And I think at this point in time, it sounds like Trump more or less has just kind of done with like the actual attempt at negotiations. And hold on, my cat's trying to jump on my lap for a second. I have to tell him no. And so at this point, I'm not really sure where things are going to go, but in my general opinion, I don't think that this, that the Iran's administration is something that is even remotely possible to negotiate with and create a country that has its own best interest in mind in regards to creating peace. I think they're called the IRGC. I think that they effectively will need to be entirely removed, and the power needs to go back to the people, and to people who will accept, no, we're not going to have nukes, and we're going to work on an economic recovery, and we're going to rebuild without this kind of air of terror. And so, yeah, I think that that's kind of generally where things are. So that's my introduction of my opinion.
So PJ or Neil, would either of you like to start us off from the left? And just, you know, I say left and right. I think that there are going to be many areas where it's not necessarily a straight left or right, if such a thing even exists. But these are just kind of the teams we have. So would either of you like to start us off from the left?
You can go ahead, Paula.
Okay.
Okay.
PJ. Anyways, looking at the circumstances that surround this conflict, we have a number of issues that have given us some insights into our foreign diplomacy and foreign policy with respect to the Iran conflict. That is for certain. I will say that Israel had a strong role in the U.S. decision to go back into Iran this year and bomb them. In other words, try to do more damage with respect to the U.S. position on no nukes. I'll go with that. In fact, Israel and Bibi Netanyahu basically are on record having told President Trump that President Trump would be successful. That would be a clear stake in the Middle East, and that a number of things would fall out of that. I think that that information wasn't very accurate, because the bottom line now is Iran has ended up not giving up nuclear materials. They've not ended up without resources. And I think we did not look at who their support would be when we did this thing. So Iran has been working for decades with Russia and with China, both to sell them oil and to do various things that they all think is in their best interests. And the thing I get out of it in this war, or conflict as it is called, is that we need to assess where we're at now, because we're not going to solve it. With respect to the United States' position, I don't disagree with nukes. I think Iran should not have nukes. However, getting rid of nukes in Iran is not going to happen by an air-supported war that the United States could do, since it will require thousands of troops engaging with Iranian troops on the ground in order to come up with a military solution. So frankly, I'm at a point where I sort of think that I can understand the effort. I don't think we had the right resources. I don't think we understood what Iran's main issues were now. We thought we had a moment when they were weak and vulnerable, and it's proven that that's not the case. Where we go from here is open to conjecture.
Thanks, Paula. So Joseph, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah. Personally, I feel like the Iranian war is a multifaceted issue. I do think, I agree with Paula that I do think Trump was slightly influenced in regards to Israel, but I don't think that that was 100% or even 50% of the reason why it happened. A lot of the actions Trump has taken has seemed to be countering China's Belt and Roads Initiative. When it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to a lot of the actions he's taking control of the energy production globally. And again, some of it's been successful and some of it hasn't. But it seems like he's working to reestablish America as the dominant producer or the global insurer when it comes to energy, that like, okay, they keep the lights on. You know, they're the ones that are keeping the oil flowing. And when it came to Iran, I think there was always a need to go in or to kind of restructure what was going on. And what was going with, you know, the nuclear production, with Iran being emboldened to like, oh, hey, we're building nukes and it's going to Israel. Like we're gonna take out Tel Aviv. We're making it a parking lot. It essentially made it clear like, okay, we need to get this done before it becomes a problem. And then when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, you look at what Trump's doing, and it's clear that he's telling the world, like, hey, this is a key area. Look at what happens when one rogue nation decides to shut the doors and the entire world is now at their beck and call because they control the flow. They shouldn't have that power. NATO needs to step in. The rest of the world needs to say something and do something. It doesn't need to just be the U.S. that's ensuring everything. Like, we're the ones that have the power, but at the same time, we're also the ones that have been doing it for free for decades. Like, we've been the one that's bankrolling NATO. We've been the ones that's making sure that, like, you know, the big bad guys aren't really emboldened to do anything other than a slap on the wrist, and then we come in and they back down. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Iran's trying to be some kind of, I don't know, big man on the playground. And Trump's been pretty diligent on not going too far. Like, some of the bombings I wasn't happy with. I mean, the entire war in general I wasn't happy with because I voted for him because he said no new wars. But at the end of the day, you can't sit there and keep getting kicked and expect not to, you know, swing a punch yourself. So I guess that's where I'm at.
It appears Lewis. Oh, now he's
But thank you for that, Joseph. And I think that leaves us with Neil.
Awesome. Everybody hear me? How's my voice?
Yes.
Okay, great. So when you're dealing with Iran, you got to understand some of the differences between these countries. Iran is Shia, and they've always been a minority group within Islam. And the majority group within Islam is the Sunni. And the Sunni and the Shia do not get along. If you go far enough back in Christianity, you had a period of time where Catholics and Protestants were at odds, as in they were killing each other for being Catholics and Protestants. And for Iran and Shia nations like Kingdom of Saudi, we're not that far removed from that place in history. Now, what started all this and how we ended up with Iran as an enemy is we inflicted and helped overthrow a democratically elected government and put the Shah of Iran in power. And he was a butcher. If your kid was in high school and was mouthing off to his friends about the Shah, your kid would disappear and you'd never hear from him again. And eventually a large group of Iranians rose, and they were from every rank. They were socialists, they were Islamic radicals, any kind of person you could think of in the world was involved in this group, and they overthrew the Shah. And the deal was they agreed to all share power. And then the radical Islamists rose in and they seized power and decided not to go the democracy route, and they purged the nation. They specifically wiped out almost all of the military officers, took them right out, either put them in jail or killed them. And there was another bad guy over there by the name of Saddam Hussein, who was also Sunni. And he had one of the biggest armies in the world, although it was mostly it was mostly antiquated equipment, but it was a large army. And he said, you know what? Their military leaders are gone. I'm going to go in and take Iran, and I'm going to take their oil. And he went in with that bigger army, and that ended up being an 8-year war. And without the military, the radical nature of these IRGC fighters was so profound that it stopped Iraq in their tracks, and Iran fought them to a standstill. So in the modern history, all right, every president since George Herbert Walker Bush has been approached by Israel to take and go to war with Iran, and every president said no, because they understood exactly what was going to happen. And we're experiencing it now. Once you go in there and you attack them, it's a foregone conclusion they were going to go after the Straits and Hormuz. It's not the first time they even did it. And I forget historically when they did it the first time. All right. It's a very narrow gap, and it's easy for them to control. And they've had a long time to think about it. So they're using asymmetrical warfare. They are, in fact, using very cheap drones, and they're matching it up against our very expensive military. And we're using $1 million missiles to put down, $200 drones. And it's costing us an arm and a leg. And so it's called asymmetrical warfare. And here's the other thing about taking on radical Muslims, okay? There's a movie of the Blues Brothers with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi where they said, oh, it's okay, we're on a mission from God. And that was kind of like, the laugh line, because they were always doing something ridiculous. With these guys, it's real. They believe it's the will of God. Everything that will happen is the will of God. They do not fear us. Now, that's not the Iranian people. That is the Iranian theocracy. They believe this is all the will of God, and they believe they will be victorious, and they don't care how many people die serving the will of God. And so when we go against these guys, it is going to be aside from anything we saw in Iraq. Now, Iran is using the asymmetrical warfare. Yeah, we pretty much devastated their Navy, and they ought to send us a Christmas card and a thank you, because that Navy was antiquated and they were having to pay big money to keep it floating on the docks, and we sank it for them, and now they don't have to spend that money on that. And so when you look at Iran, its size compared to Iraq, it is massively bigger. If you look at the population, you're talking 93 million Iranians. Now, all the Iranians are not our enemy. Most Iranians are just like anybody else. They want to get up, go to work, do what they got to do, come home, pay their bills, have a good life, right? But it's the radicals you got to be concerned about. And in, say, Iraq, the population was only 45 million. So you're looking at twice the amount of people, or close to it, that we would be facing if we were to invade Iran. And the only way we win this, and they know this and we know this, is to put boots on the ground and go into a slugfest through their cities and into the mountains. And that's where they will eventually, all the IRGC and the other radicals will meet us, and they'll make us come in after them. So what you're seeing now is the Ayatollah Lucy holding the football and say, come on, Donald Brown, come kick that ball. I won't pull it away. And every time he gets suckered in to kicking the ball, she pulls it away. So they're going to continue this. And if you're going to extend past what they're doing, this also serves a role for their allies. In China is an ally, Russia is an ally, and North Korea is an ally. And us getting tied up with the Iranians is a gift to those other countries. And I'm going to say this, it's kind of, for me, it is kind of ludicrous to think that if Iran wants a nuclear weapon, they're not going to get one. How many people have faith that Kim Jong in North Korea won't just deliver them nuclear weapons? I think he would, because we can't control him either. He's a nut. So I'm going to end with one final thing that really galls me. All right. We say that Iran is the leader in terrorism, not as far as America is concerned. Absolutely not. So we know about Hezbollah and all the proxies that work around Iran that they pay and they weaponize to go out and hurt people. And it's usually the Israelis, right? And yes, they hit us in Beirut. I was in the Marine Corps. I served with people who were at that barracks that survived. And that's something that sits between the Marine Corps and Iran, and it will always be there. There are a lot of Marines that would love to go on the ground against the IRGC for what happened in Lebanon. But that said, at the end of the day, the greatest sponsor of terrorism in the world killed more Americans in one day than Iran has in the last 50 years, and that's the Kingdom of Saudi. Their proxy is Al-Qaeda, ISIS. In fact, if you remember, we were pulling out of Afghanistan, and we finally started getting along with the Taliban and said, it's yours, we're leaving it, and that bomb went off that killed all those U.S. personnel. That wasn't the Taliban that did that. That was ISIS-K. They were a proxy of the Kingdom of Saudi. And we seem to lose this. And whether you're watching Fox, MSNBC, or CNN, they are bolstering this lie. I would say safely that Kingdom of Saudi's radical proxies have probably killed or responsible for the deaths of somewhere around 11,000 Americans since 9/11. And actually before that, because they blew up a couple embassies and they blew up the USS Cole. And several other places they hit us in, actually in the Kingdom of Saudi. So they've been hitting us long and they've been hitting us hard. And this is what I think Americans need to pay attention to. And that is the prince of the Kingdom of Saudi walks into the White House all the time. And we're now talking about giving them a military base in the United States. And I cannot even believe we would entertain that. So these are things, and because I was in the Corps and I was in doing med pumps, I learned at that time I was in, Iran was pretty formidable on the terrorism front. Since then, the Sunnis and Kingdom of Saudi have completely replaced them. You remember what they did to Khashoggi, right? And they took a guy that was working for the New York Times. The prince's intelligence got a hold of him, and they literally cut him apart while he was alive, as punishment for speaking out against the Kingdom of Saudi in America. So we got to be careful when we're fed lines of garbage by our own government. And I'll stop there, but we definitely need to talk about oil and how oil works, because that's a big part of whatever's going on here. I'll end it there.
All right. Thank you, Neil. So I do want to, I will let you speak next, Paula. But there is a member comment if anyone wants to address it. And
well, that's what
we
I
had
wanted
talked about
to address,
before.
Lewis.
Perfect. We had talked before about questions and sort of a conversation. So Paula, why don't you address that? And then if you have a question for anyone else, go for it. If not, we'll turn it over to Joden to see if he has questions or quick rebuttals to anything that was said before. So over to you. And I'm sorry, PJ. Over to you, PJ.
There we go. So member comment was that we needed to address the Trump administration initiating its strikes last year, and they claimed victory after destroying the enrichment capabilities. The DNI stated there was no intelligence that they were enriching further during Senate testimony under oath, and that they weren't pursuing a nuclear bomb. So the comment is basically a good question. What intelligence are we actually using to draw the conclusion that Joden and Joseph used, that they are weeks away from enriching uranium, would have a bomb, and would flatten Israel? Guys?
Yeah, I guess I would say, like, they went into negotiations.
Their own words.
Yeah, their own words. Like, they went into the negotiations. I mean, unless the people, our own people, just came back and lied about it, like, but we don't know whether if they lied about it or not. But from the negotiations, when the two people that I earlier mentioned walked in, and then when they returned, they said, what the leadership in Iran told us was, they basically laughed and they said, you didn't get them all, and we're weeks away from getting them, and we're going to use them. So, like,
that's not what they said when they came back, though, Joden.
That is what they said.
No, the people who went over, who happened to be Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to discuss this with the Iranians early on before the vice president was called in. Basically, the Iranians told them, and put it out in all kinds of notifications, that they weren't actively pursuing enrichment at that time, but they want to reserve the right to create energy sources, and they think that nuclear power is the way to go. That got translated somewhere. I think we're back to what intelligence are we actually using to shore up the perspectives that have come out of this? Because if Iran wanted to enrich that uranium and created a bomb, and they were 2 weeks away from doing so, they still had the means to do so.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what you're referring to, because like I remember watching the video where they're on some news thing and they said, yeah, this is what he said. They described the entire situation. They walked in and they were trying to negotiate, and the Iranian leadership told them. So they told them, hey, you didn't get them all. We still have nuclear sites, nuclear development sites that are currently working, and we are weeks away from developing a nuke. So like, I don't know, maybe you've got why didn't they what?
We attacked them and blew up a lot of stuff, but we didn't eradicate the material, and we didn't eradicate all of the sites because we keep going back into Iran and striking them again. So
we didn't know. We didn't know the secret ones. Yeah, we didn't have all of the intelligence that said, hey, like we had a level of intelligence that said these are the locations that we know of where they are developing nukes. And then the Iranian leadership, in my opinion, was incredibly dumb. And they said, well, you didn't get them all. That's what they told, I guess, Witkoff and Kushner.
I don't believe either person all that much without some independent
that's what those
verification.
The two individuals came back, and that's what they said happened.
Yeah,
either we're just not going to believe them, which I can't do anything about.
They're not very honest people all the time, and I'd like to believe them in this case because I'd like to believe we did this whole conflict for good and sufficient reasons, and that there was a pursuit of an objective, and an objective was accomplished.
Right. Well,
I'm saying is they get attacked. They do have the upper echelon of their religious government is taken out. Obviously, we all know that. But the rest of their military, other than their boats, which mostly were boats and not ships, and most of the sites that they had were just not enough to have destroyed that capability. So if they were telling Kushner and company, hey, look, we're 2 weeks away, and we go in there and say we're taking that out, we didn't take that out.
Well,
we didn't do anything to
aware.
And frankly, they were discussing with Russia 3 days before the attack the objective idea of taking the higher enriched materials and giving it to Russia as a proxy. Well, so I wish I understood. I agree with comment that we need to know the intelligence. Thank you.
We don't
Jordan,
know.
if you wanna finish up, then I think Neil had something to add.
Well, why did Iran
can we let Jordan
enrich uranium to begin with?
Joseph, step in. Yeah. Say it again,
Go ahead,
Joseph.
Neil or Joseph. You go ahead, Neil.
Just curious, like the comment was made. Was
Sorry, Neil, we can't hear you if you're. So there's a.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me jump on this. So I remember I have a lot of friends that are Trumpers, and I remember when they jumped all over that. Oh yeah, they told us, they let it leak that they have all this nuclear material to them to a nuclear weapon. And I asked the question, is that a trap? Can you just take anything these people say at face value? If you remember, the Bush administration, George W. Bush, got us into Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It is my opinion Iran wanted us to attack them. They wanted to drag us into this and keep our nose to the grindstone facing them, knowing that we don't want to put troops on the ground because of what it's going to mean. And they're just going to keep drawing us in. And I think the whole thing of, oh, you missed all our material. We got tons of it. In fact, we got a genie down in the mine sitting on a whole pile. And I think we're going to come to the realization that we accepted at face value something the Iranians told us, and it was likely just to get us to do what we did.
Well, I think that's something that in the future, maybe it'll come to fruition of like, oh, it turns out this whole thing was a lie, just like with under Bush, right? There were years that took place where people believed that there were weapons of mass destruction, and there weren't, and it ended up being bad intelligence. So this would kind of fall on, and I think it would absolutely destroy the reputations of Witkoff and Kushner if they were lying when they came back and they said, hey, they said that they still have nuclear facilities, and that they're going to use them, and they're very close to using them. Yeah, so I mean, I don't really know how. To me, it seems like when they went into negotiations that one time before they destroyed all of the leadership, it seemed like things were effectively ended. It was like, okay, look, we destroyed your material, we destroyed your sites. It's all buried. This is before we destroyed their military, before we destroyed their Navy, all their Air Force, all that stuff. And we said, look, now's the time to negotiate so that you can keep your government, so that you can continue running things, but you can't have nuclear weapons. And the response that we got back from that was, ha ha, you didn't get them all. We're about to nuke everybody. Right? We're about to nuke Israel.
We all know what that means, right? If they ever nuke anybody, and we don't say this part out loud, although Trump kind of did, if they ever unleash nukes on Israel, the United States, Europe, or even a Sunni country, we are going to devastate them.
But exactly, but just like what you said, exactly like what you said is they do not care. Well, they don't care about their lives. They don't care about any of that stuff. Their entire purpose is to eliminate Israel. They don't care if everybody dies. To eliminate Israel is worth
Allah
it to
commands
them.
it.
Yeah, and so I wanted to make another comment that Neil you kind of mentioned, where like, okay, they wanted to get us involved and have us waste all of our resources and to put boots on the ground and all that kind of stuff, and to honestly, I do not believe that America is at a technological state where we even need to put boots on the ground. Maybe some special operations here or there, but I really feel like there could be some simple messaging that says, look, like normal Iranian people, remove yourselves from from the institutions of operations, the power levers that control how everything is run. Just remove yourselves from there. And then what that means is effectively everybody who is in those buildings, everybody who is doing the work, all of those individuals, those are IRGC enemies, right? Boom, you can do targeted strikes. Apparently we have technology like satellite technology where you can read license plates on cars. We can blow up a refrigerator from easy, right? We can do hyper targeted strikes. So, and we can wait. We can say, oh, you're going out to grab some milk. Boom, you're gone, right? Like we can identify specific individuals, specific institutions, specific buildings, and we can minimize civilian casualties, right? And so I really don't think, I mean, this may be a process that takes a long time, but eventually I think that what can happen is we destroy their infrastructure. We destroy their not necessarily infrastructure, but their institutions. And then once all of that is destroyed well enough, you can basically say, okay, now is the time for people for the people to go in and take control of these of these levers. And then there's still going to be our IRGC people, and they're doing all this stuff, but they're not going to be in power of the institutions. And then you can say, okay, now you guys have normal people police officers instead of IRGC police officers. You can have like the power then goes back to the people, and then it becomes the people's problem to have to locate and remove the threats of the IRGC individuals. So we would at that point kind of say, look, now you guys have a domestic terrorist problem. Maybe we can work with you to say, hey, if you want to tell us like, hey, we've located a place where like this is where everybody's gathering. We can maybe be like, all right, sure, we'll do a quick strike, just take out a handful of people, sure. But it's absolutely possible with our level of technology and capabilities for us not to have a traditional war where we're putting boots on the grounds. When we can look at how we handled Venezuela, it's like we can do basically that. Here's the special operations. We discombobulate people and take people out. Like we have the ability to not have to, put boots on the grounds.
Just a quick housekeeping, housekeeping note. We're going to keep talking about Iran. We're not going to move on to taxes. We'll save that for another debate. And then Neil, if you want to respond to Jordan, and then Joseph, if you have anything to say, please weigh in. But after that, Paula, there is a member comment agreeing with you. So if you'd like to expand on that after Neil and Joseph, after Neil gets in his rebuttal, and then Joseph, if you have anything to say, please go ahead. So Neil, over to you.
Yeah, so I'd like to say that just as long as you're aware, anything's possible, but what you're putting forward has never been done. It's never been effectively done. The only way you take out an Adolf Hitler, a Stalin, is or Hirohito, is you go in and you take them down and they cease to exist as a functioning organization. We hit them by surprise, right? And we took out their Ayatollah. We took out their high-ranking clerics. We took out a lot of their negotiators because they didn't see it coming. And their son the Ayatollah's son has now been moved Ayatollah. You ever seen him in public? You're not going to. Doesn't mean we can't get him. But again, we're right back to they're on a mission from God. And if that Ayatollah dies, it's because God's got their back and he's got another thing in mind. These guys will not, until we get on the ground and put them down, they will continue to be a threat. And it's going to make Iraq look like a walk in the park if we go into Iran.
Well, I think
I'm somebody that has a bias to want to see it from the Marine Corps standpoint.
I feel like we can make it.
Want access to the IRGC.
I feel like we could make it in we could create a situation where, sure, you have one guy who's hidden somewhere, and they're making the calls for other people to do things, but we could just strike the people that are doing things. To me, they're all the same.
Yeah. So.
They're not actually, guys.
Oh, sorry.
No, they're not. There's 2.3 million people, and the mullahs, the Sunni mullahs that have been operating since time immemorial, with some crazy ideas about a mission from God. We're dealing with an enclave that has more than 50 years to develop itself, reinforce its ideology, reinforce how it works on the ground to meet that kind of force. So I don't know where we're going to
I'm
go
not
from
saying that
here,
there's
but
the regular people don't strike the regular people, but the people who are participating. Yeah, the people who are participating in in conducting the work that the IRGC is pushing out. Those people are they not the enemy?
I would like to have them not be an enemy, and I don't think beating them up further is going to help us create the situation.
I don't know how you solve it then.
That's a different topic in a way.
Taking them.
Joseph needs a better intelligence for a start, but Joseph, I'm sorry I intruded in rebuttal right there. To Neil. Thank you, Neil.
You're fine.
Joseph, did you have anything?
I just find it
Go ahead, Neil.
funny that... No, you're fine. I think there's a lag. I don't know why, but it seems like when I talk, there's like a delay. But personally, I find it funny that Iran was enriching uranium to 6%, and that's their own people saying that. And we can debate whether or not they're a solid source, like whether they're a good source to and take honestly. But if a rogue nation that at one time, maybe not currently, but at one time was the supplier for terrorism across the world, is saying that they're enriching uranium to 60%, which is a precursor to weapons grade uranium, which is 90%, I would be a little concerned about that. And they stated that in 2021. So 5 years later, I don't know where they are. I have no idea because I don't have the intelligence that the U.S. government has. But I can honestly assess that if 5 years ago they were at 60, I can guarantee they're at 90 now. They might not have a delivery system as it stands because we have, all kinds of satellites and whatnot, viewing Iran and verifying that Russia, North Korea, and other nations aren't bringing, platforms for them to send stuff. But that doesn't mean they're not going to bring in attack nuke. I honestly don't see the world really doing anything if Iran blows up one city. I hate to, but I feel this about Russia and Ukraine. If Russia sneaks in, attack, and blows up one Ukrainian city, I think there's going to be a lot of calls for stuff. But at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And I'm worried, but I feel like any delay towards that inevitability is a good idea. And that's just where I feel about it.
I would like to add, if the nation you don't want mad at you is Israel. Because Israel has a long memory, and if you cross them, they're coming for you. And I think it was Spielberg did a movie about how terrorists targeted Israelis, I think at the Munich Olympics. And the movie was about how they spent 20 years after that hunting down every single person that was involved with it and killing them. In Israel, we saw in more recent times how they got a hold of pagers that were headed to Hamas and Hezbollah and made them explosive devices. And then one day they just pressed a button and these pagers exploded all over the Middle East. And they have not been able to bring down this Iranian theocracy. So I'm not all that hopeful that that approach is going to work. If it works, great. I would love the idea of the Iranian people rising against them, but they're more afraid of us than even they are of their own, because we have always been the nation that put a knife in their back. Now, what the answer is, and it's what we had, a lot of people, and Trump made it look like Obama solely put together this non-proliferation agreement, and that he was thumbing his thumb in Obama's eye. But the truth is, it was the world that brought that to Iran, and more specifically, it was the combination of Russia and China who sat with us to say, you're not getting a nuke, so you play ball with everybody, and everybody's going to help you out. And I think that's what we got to get back to. And I don't know if China and Russia now are in the mindset that they want to help us get out of this.
I feel like the agreement of through Obama, and I guess, as you might say, the world, to say, hey, look, we're going to have an agreement with Iran that says, no more nuclear proliferation. You guys are not going to be working to develop that. And then I remember Obama sends them, we're going to help you. We're going to help you economically. We're going to help you do all of this other stuff instead of you guys developing nukes. And Obama is as it's been, there's images and stuff shown of pallets of cash, as is often cited, being flown over there. But from that point all the way up until effectively now, all that Iran effectively did was say, hey, you know what? All of that, the help that you're giving us, the money that we're receiving, they were just redirecting that money over to Hezbollah and Hamas and other terrorist organizations. So while they weren't, they probably were, as we can kind of tell, they were still working on nuclear stuff. They still had those sites that were in existence. They didn't shut them down. They just maybe put a pause on it. But they were redirecting a lot of those funds to creating terrorism all over the world, especially towards Israel. So,
a quick housekeeping note: we are pretty much at time in 1 minute. Paula has to leave in 5 minutes, so we're gonna try to wrap this up. PJ.
It doesn't seem to matter, right?
Yeah. I do apologize. I've known you for a long time, so it's hard for me to change the name. Other folks here I haven't known as long.
You must be really bad with remembering people's pronouns, right?
I struggle
all the time.
Well, that's a whole other topic. But yes, I do struggle with that. And what I find is people, if you make the effort, they generally accept it. So hopefully, Paula.
Oh yeah, that's real effort there.
Anyway, PJ, if you want to wrap up your final thoughts, and then you can leave, and we'll wrap up with everyone else.
Okay. Sorry, I can't be longer. I have tickets to a play. I gotta say, we need to think a little more broadly, country-wise. I'm sure the administration is doing this, but we need to take into consideration that Russia has a stake in Iran. China is now increasing its own production of nuclear warheads as a result. And that's going to increase the detente between Iran and the West. We're going to have to do more than think about solving this with Iran. I could step back to NATO and say, in rebuttal, that NATO is a defensive organization. When we prosecute a war, they don't have to go to war with us. That is very true. Just think that if we don't want production of nuclear warheads, we've got to focus on diplomacy to get that done. I don't think additional bombing and pushing through force is going to result in something we hope to get out of this, which is no nukes.
Diplomacy is what Trump has been doing for the last several months. And it's not getting us. They just string us along. They say, okay. And then they say, nope, we're still going to develop nukes.
So can we,
so diplomacy doesn't work.
Joseph also has a hard stop. So Joseph, go for it. If you want to wrap up your final thoughts.
Well, I mean, I just kind of did with my last little spiel. I mean, I liked everybody's perspective on everything, and I think I learned a little bit from Neil and Paula, PJ, just some things that I hadn't learned before or known before. So I appreciate the conversation.
Okay.
I take responsibility for Joseph not knowing which name to use because I've been screwing it up the whole time. Thank you, PJ.
Right there.
It does. I make no excuses. So, Jordan, Neil, if one of you wants to wrap up, and then we'll. Oh, wait.
Go for it, Neil.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. For the record, I'm Pisces, and my pronoun is it. And I would like to say that the one thing we need to pay attention to is how oil is orchestrated with prices based on what's happening in the Middle East. The number one oil producer in the world is America. How is oil in the Straits of Hormuz driving our oil costs up and exploiting the American consumer? And this goes all the way back to when I was a kid, and I remember in the 70s when Kingdom of Saudi started the embargo and cut production, and they said exactly what they were going to do. They were going to put the American economy on our knees because we're supporting Israel. And they absolutely did that. And here we are 60, 70 years later, and we're still playing the same game. Our oil prices should be independent of what's going on in the rest of the world because we're producing most of it here, if not all of it. So I'll leave that alone.
And Jordan, if you have final wrap up or thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts is regarding the Iran war is I think it's about time that Trump has kind of more or less, at least so far, he's just said, I'm done with negotiating. I think maybe from a I know the it's not the right word, but from a cosmetic view, going through the process of effectively demonstrating to the world that you cannot negotiate and make any actual progress with the IRGC leadership. I think that now we're kind of at a point where it's like, look, we just need to. Diplomacy does not work. We've been trying to diplomacy, and every time they say yes, we agree, every time they go to sign the papers, every time there's a deal that's being made, it always is just falling through. And on top of that, why would we even think to take their word on that they're actually going to hold themselves accountable to the agreement? They have demonstrated and shown that they purely have an interest in destroying Israel. That's their number one goal. They will do anything that is required in order to do that. And they go back on deals all the time. Their word is not worth anything. And I think that what we need to basically do is just continuously wipe out their leadership and target the institutions, remove the IRGC from power of those institutions, and then reinstall or install the citizens to be able to take care of that kind of stuff. So that may be a longer process, but I think it's a much more hands-off process than us having to go boots on the ground and stuff like that. Now, the thing that I really don't like about it is that because it's a long process, that means that the normal Iranian people are going to suffer more under a destroyed economy and a destroyed infrastructure. Their country's going to be in turmoil for longer. And so, I would be open to other ideas on how we could minimize that kind of stuff. But I think that the direct removal of the IRGC is key. And I don't think that so long as the IRGC is in control of Iran, I don't think that there's going to be an end to this conflict. If what ends up happening is we reach a level of peace and we get a ceasefire and we stop and we just allow the IRGC to continue, then the next president who gets in, or the president after, or the president after that, they're just gonna remain in power, and they're gonna continuously push for these nukes. And one day they may get them. And I don't think that that's I'm not very interested in just waiting for that to happen. I think that they need to be effectively destroyed.
All right.
So that's it.
Well, that was great from everybody. Thank you to PJ, who had to leave. Thank you to Joseph. Thank you to Neil. Thank you to Joden. And we have Neil has a comment on our abandoned tax topic.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. We will save that for the next debate. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. There is a thread on the Facebook for this debate, the Facebook post for this debate. So if anybody wants to go back and address member comments, please do so. We weren't able to address all of them in the debate. And for anyone who's listening, we do encourage members to participate in these. We've had the same recurring faces, but we would like new members to participate. So if you like this experience, please join. I think the folks here can tell you it's not that difficult. Other than me and remembering people's pen names, apparently everybody else is able to manage pretty well. So and apologies to PJ for that. So thank you, everybody. And Jeremy, is there anything else you need before we go? All right, we are all set. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the next debate, and that is all.